Hello everyone and welcome back to another video. So I was contacted by a client to see if there was something that I can do with this dresser as it had a lot of damage. So let's jump straight into this one and see what I come up with. So as I started to get into this piece, I did notice that there was a lot of repairs that were going to need to be made. It is minor. There is damage to the veneer on a lot of the edges of the drawers, and a lot of the drawers did have the dovetail joinery coming apart. So I had to get out my pin nailer so that I can add some glue and just tack those down so that way those will stay nice and solid. So when you have a lot of joints like this that come apart, there is a lot of friction that is created because they have a lot more flex in them. So when you try to open and close them, it is very difficult. So this is one of the first things that I like to take care of. Other than the damage that I found so far, the carcass of this piece is very solid, and I think that I can do something with this, but it's going to require mostly paint, and I don't really like to paint, but in order for these things to be saved, sometimes that is the only option. So I am sanding everything, and I came across a lot of pigtails that were existing, which tells me somebody has already attempted to restore this at some point, and they put like a really thick varnish or some kind of wax or something because it was really gumming up my sanding pads, and it was just a lot of buildup. Using 150 grit sandpaper so I can create a nice bond for the primer to stick to, and I'm using Dixie Bell's mud so that I can fill in all the deep scratches and gouges. What I like about this wood filler is that it is very lightweight and it spreads on very easy, but it still dries very hard, so you can fill all of those deeper scratches and gouges in. And because I don't like to use wood filler on a top that has deep wood grain because it causes a lot of splotchy finishes, so I'm using it to fill in all of the wood grain since it is so lightweight and spreads very easy. And I move on to the two top drawers because they are going to be bare wood, and I use 150 grit and 220 grit sandpaper to get those all the way down. If you are a regular viewer of my channel, you know that I don't really use primer all that much because the paint that I use doesn't really require it. But when I do lighter pieces, especially white, I like to use a primer because I don't want any of that bleed through to come through, and then it just makes a big mess of your project and you have to use a lot of paint and then sometimes even go over it with primer again. So it's just pretty wasteful. So I just like to do it up front and not take any chances. So I'm going to do 2 coats of the primer, and a lot of people ask the steps and the processes that I take to do paint because I don't usually film at all because it's just a little boring and repetitive. But always scuff sand in between each coat, and when I say scuff sand, I don't mean actually really sit there and sand that primer down. You just need like a high grit, maybe the lowest grit 400 grit, to scuff sand very lightly in between coats just to make it nice and smooth, so that way when you lay your second coat on, you're going to have a really nice smooth finish. So because I am doing the 2 top drawers, I wanted to do the legs in solid wood as well, and I attempted to try to remove these legs, but these ones were glued on, and I believe they were screwed on as well. And a lot of times I've come across pieces where the leg will be put on and then the bolt will be added to it to secure it, and then they'll put a trim piece or something over the top of it to cover it that you can't really access anymore. So I just decided to sand them in place and tape them off so that way I can stain them later after everything is painted. So I'm using Silk's all-in-one mineral paint by Dixie Bell, And even though it says you don't really need a primer, it's an all-in-one, I still do the primer because I did notice a lot of bleed through the primer, but this stuff covers it up very, very well. And I really like that this is more of an off-white and not a super bright white, and it makes it look very, very classy. And the finish on it is more matte-ish than it is a gloss, and I really like that as well. So this paint does say that you only need 2 coats for full coverage, but because I'm spraying, the coats are a lot thinner. So I'm doing 3 with 400 grit sanding in between each coat. And in this shot, you can really see that cream colored white against that primer that's bright white. And I really, really love it because it's, you know, a little different, and I don't really like bright white. It just reminds me of IKEA. And I am using a verathane stain. It is Carrington, and I really love that color because it is a brownish red, and it really looks good against that white paint. I'm using a furniture wax called Big Mama's Butter by Dixie Bell. This stuff is really, really good. It smells great, and it really brings out the richness of the color, and it really helps to condition the wood when it is really dry. As you can see coming up, the side of that drawer was really, really dry, and it needed to be conditioned very bad. So this stuff really comes in handy for that, and also it makes your piece smell really, really good. The ending of this video is going to be a little different from my other ones. The customer was so excited to pick this up that they met me right after work, and I was only able to get 1 picture of this piece. So really fast, I can go over the numbers and show you a couple of pictures of before and after. I did charge them $450 to redo this piece, and I had no expenses because everything that I used for it was free, and they dropped it off and picked it up. I am super thankful for all the support that I'm getting on my channel, and I cannot wait to see you all on my next project.